Good afternoon. I am going to call this meeting to order of the Building and Finance Subcommittee. Today is Wednesday, March 16th, 2022. The time is 5:00 p.m. We are meeting here in person at the Gloucester High School Library located at 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road in Gloucester, Massachusetts. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with state open meeting law pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the Gloucester School Committee's Budget and Finance Subcommittee during this and future meetings will be by roll call vote. At this meeting, there is no public comment, therefore instructions on how to speak to the subcommittee virtually are not issued. If you'd like to address the Gloucester School Committee, please comment at our regularly scheduled full school committee meetings. We will start with introductions. I'm going to start with Cody over on the table.
Cody Marshall, Finance Director.
Ben Lummis, Superintendent of Schools.
Gary Frisch, Chief Financial Officer.
Melissa Prince, School Committee.
Kathy Clancy, School Committee.
Bill Melvin, School Committee.
And
Maria Puglisi, Recording Secretary.
thank you. So our first order of business is the Chief Financial Officer's report.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairperson. The first item on the agenda is some special budgetary transfers. We have two for consideration. The first one deals with compensating the city, reimbursing the city for school choice charges for special ed tuition by the Department of Revenue. We have some parents and students that live in Gloucester and have choiced out to another public school district. Their services weren't available at that school for them, for the student. And so they found another LEA, local education agency, to better support the student. The charges per Department of Revenue, state law, come back to the sending district. We are the sending district. And so the city incurred on their cherry sheet charges, and we're reimbursing the charges, which add up for, there's 7 students. They add up to $420,000 and $420,452. These 7 students are listed, not the students, but where they go attend school. And this has been the practice that we've had since 2017, each year. And if you go to the next slide on the PowerPoint, you'll see a total of 7 students, the different schools, the number of students per school, and the total for FY22 is $420,452. And then you can see what we spent in FY21, FY20, and FY19. So it runs from $310,000 to $420,000 over the last 4 years. So I would like to entertain any questions that the B&F committee has.
Bill Melvin.
Yeah, Gary, do these students go directly from the Gloucester Public Schools to these schools, or did I hear you say that they went to another school?
They went to another school.
Didn't find the services that they need, ended up going to one of these schools.
Yes, that's exactly right. And we're on the, so to speak, hook
Oh, yeah.
for the charges. In fact, it gets charged to the city. And our practice since 2017 is to reimburse the city for these charges.
Got it. And my second question is, what determines, who's the determining authority that, okay, student A goes to Manchester High School and
Yeah.
doesn't get the services he needs there, ends up going to Landmark. Who determines that A, he didn't get the services he needed at Landmark, and B, or Manchester, yeah. B, Landmark's the place he needs to go.
That is, they have a committee composed of parent and teachers at Manchester. And they meet and determine what is the best placement for the child. It's
the same special education IEP process that we follow here.
Okay.
So cognitive evaluation, or depending what type of services might be needed, it could be cognitive, could be intellectual, could be behavioral. And then then goes through the IEP process with the district and the family to determine that. I don't know, but we should find out for you whether or not we have a say in that process.
That's what I'm driving at.
Yeah.
Is
yeah, we don't have a say.
we don't.
Yeah, it's been discussed before,
Oh.
that it would be nice if we had a say.
Some money, but we can't send.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious what services maybe through Katie Provo that seem collaborative and sources provide. Just so we understand what kind of services if the child was actually living in Gloucester, would we have probably come to a similar conclusion, nothing specific, but we do know that various programs North Shore Consortium provides and all that. Because ideally you'd want anybody that could be serviced here
Right.
to know, or we'd love to have them serviced here.
Right. Those are the same, we do send our students to those various schools as well.
And my last question is, does anyone end up in the Gloucester Public Schools that we determine needs to go to a different school?
In choice into
So this
Gloucester,
is Gloucester.
and we identify these as a replacement.
But I don't
We're
know.
not ready to answer that question. We'll find out that from Katie Provo.
Yeah, Katie would know.
We'll
find out. But in that situation, we would not, the city would not be charged. Our city,
Their city. that's right.
their city would be charged.
Right.
They're sending the-
Yeah,
So-
it's just the shoes on the other foot.
Shoes on the other
We'll
foot.
find out how often the shoes on the other foot. Gary, note to you and me that when we discuss this next year, let's make sure that Katie's here.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay,
So we need a motion.
I move that we approve the special budgetary transfer in the amount of $420,452. Is that the motion? It needs to go to the city, right?
Yeah.
I have the wording of the motion.
Okay, thank you, Maria. And I said, look,
Second,
So we have a motion second. Can you just read the language of that motion that you say you have?
It's in my notes. It's in like prior minutes.
Something special about transferring the
Yes.
money from our budget to their budget?
Yeah.
Okay, so
From
we
the
have a
city,
motion
from
and a
the school to
second.
the city.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote?
Mr. Melvin,
yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
And Kathy Clancy.
yes,
Okay, that motion, it's a motion to recommend to the school committee to transfer. Okay,
Okay,
next.
we have one more transfer. That is we reimburse the city for the second school resource officer, which happens to be at O'Malley School. We've been doing that since 2014, and that's $60,000. So it's a similar motion to this reimburse the city for $60,000.
So we've been doing it at the high school since 2014 and then now doing it at O'Malley, correct?
Correct.
We haven't
Yes.
had O'Malley, we've only had O'Malley for what, 2 years, 3 years?
No, that's been my
Since COVID?
notes, 2014. Yeah, this reimbursement started in the spring of
but
2014.
I think that's when we got our first.
That's for the high school one.
That's the first one.
Yeah, the second
Yeah.
one started with Sabathia, I think 2 or 3 years ago. It goes right before COVID,
Okay,
but I'm not sure, just in case you need to know that.
thank you.
So it's for this is the second resource officer that we're,
Right,
for this one you're looking for payment tonight, it's the second one.
The second
not the
is,
first one.
right.
Do we still need to do the first one?
No, the first one is
Already done.
paid by the city.
City.
The second one was to be reimbursed by us.
Therefore paid by us.
We pay the health insurance of the city is for the first one, is that how it works?
No, the first one is paid in full by the city. And the
Yeah, that's
second,
new. That's new.
How it was. What?
That's new. It was
That's
always, we
new, yeah.
reimbursed them for the GHS one, and they're picking up the bill for him now. But with the second one we want to do, they want us to pay for it. for
So the
one that's
first one
new.
is now fully paid by the city,
That's our
because that's not how
understanding.
it started,
That's not how it started, right?
right? And now, so we don't need to worry about the high school now. So just now for the O'Malley one, this is a transfer for the salary costs?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 60,000 for
60,000.
salary?
Yep.
Okay. And do you have the language on that motion as well?
Okay, so I recommend that, I move that we recommend to the full school committee to approve the special budgetary transfer request for the school resource officer for the fiscal year 2022 in the amount of 60,000.
Second.
So we have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
And Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
thank you.
You're welcome.
We are moving now to the next agenda item, which is, and the first up is Ben. He's going to talk about the goals for tonight.
Thank you, Carrie. So just a few things before we get into the details of the budget book, because we have a few things to achieve tonight. One is helping the subcommittee understand the sort of basic principles behind local and state education funding, including Chapter 70. This is a big chunk of the budget book, and it's and it's not easy to understand. So we want to make sure that you guys remember, those who've been on the committee before and those who are new, get your first piece of learning this complicated formula and what goes into it, and how the state funding mechanisms and state calculation mechanisms and local contribution fit together to fund our schools. That's the first goal. The second goal will be just reviewing the primary components, some of the, and we sort of introduced you to these about a month ago, but now I want to show you the actual pieces of the primary components of the FY 2023 school budget, which are the same components each year. And then the last piece we're going to close with connecting some of those details and that you'll see in the budget book with our district-wide priorities and our principles for the budget development process. So the first off is getting to the nuts and bolts of school finance, and Gary's going to take us away with that.
Okay, thank you, Ben. This might be a good opportunity for us to just how we're going to structure this conversation. And I like it to be a conversation. So, please interrupt me for a question.
Should you give us the books first?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful.
Okay, good idea.
Where are you going with that?
I didn't make one from Rand. I can if need be.
I'm all set. Seeing
Thanks for
those.
Look at the electronic.
Sure, PTSD was
So notice that I'm also using it. It's a good use of it is also the
Right,
laptop.
right, I like that.
Yeah, and I'll be producing a digital version that I'll do.
Before we get into the slides, there's number tabs and there's letter tabs. The number tabs are different components of the budget process, and like enrollment, grants, other things that affect the budget. And then the alphabet letters are all the different budgets per program. And then tab 13 is the summary of the budget summary in one page. And then we have the 3 actual years prior, and we have 3 projected years. So it's in the 8-year, altogether, it's 8 years. 3 actual, the current budget, proposed budget, and 3 projected years. So the projected years allow us to know where we're going in the future. What's our expectations? But at any rate, let's look at the slideshow. And the first up is I wanted to just ground us, give a baseline of talk about the 2 primary sources of funding for the school operations. And this is Article 18, Section 2 of the Massachusetts Constitution. And basically, it talks about local contribution, and it talks about the common allocated back to the schools, and that's from the state aid. So local aid and state aid. What's interesting, very interesting about this wording here is that the local contribution comes first. So I would interpret that as the primary source, and then we'll see some evidence of that. And the secondary source is the state aid. So primary local, secondary state aid.
Would you say that differently if we were like Chelsea, where they got most of their state aid from the state? Would you flip that? Is that what's making you say that, because we get the majority from the local aid?
Looking at it in aggregate, specifically, it's a very good point. Specifically, town by town, it varies.
Right.
So Chelsea is a lower income, and the state provides more contribution to lower wealth communities and less to more wealthier communities.
So in that case, would you call the state the primary?
No,
I'm trying to figure out why.
You know, the reason,
Figuring that out.
even in that case, any cases where the state is providing, you know, the majority of funding because the locality can't, okay, isn't able to, so to speak.
Yeah.
They still are calculating what their contribution needs to be first, okay, and getting to that.
Okay,
And then when after looking at the local wealth and, you know, contribution, you know, that it can't, that's when they start coming with a state aid. But they're still trying to figure out what the local contribution is.
He's exactly right.
I
And
was
there-
just trying to figure out what you meant by primary, so that's all.
Yeah, in aggregate. So looking at all the state, all the school districts in the state, and we'll see a slide on that, and we'll back up why I'm saying primary. So just want to, as you know, there's limits on property taxation, and the limits are 2.5%. So this is what's been in place, 2.5%. But what is interesting nowadays, with inflation at 7.9%, it's going to be hard to balance our budgets with this kind of inflation. So let's move on to the next slide. Fiscal 23 state budget. This is in round numbers. Got it from the governor's press office. 48.5 billion, sorry. That's a big difference. Is the state budget proposal by the governor. He also is recommending 5.28 billion, or 11% of the budget, to education, the Chapter 70 formula. Now, the state has calculated this, the total statewide, and this is total, all the school districts, and the total is 12.9 billion. Now, it's very important to understand what the foundation budget is. I mean, it's a funny term, but think of the floor as the foundation, and that is the minimum. So the floor is the bottom. So this is talking about the minimum required spending by a school district, by all the school districts in the state. And that represents, and this is why I'm saying it's secondary, 41%. So,
Meaning 5.28 billion is 41% of 12.9 billion.
yes,
Say that one more time?
So 5.28 billion, what the state is actually funding for public education
Yeah.
is only 41% of what the state has calculated is the total cost of education in the state, 12.9 billion.
so that's why I'm saying it's secondary, because the primary source of the majority of the funding to support the foundation budget for all the schools in the state of Mass is 59%. And that's coming from the local.
And now we're gonna look at how, we're gonna get to eventually, is how in some places, including Gloucester, that percentage of the local contribution is much higher. Okay, so here.
So let's look at the next slide.
There we go.
And this this is a graphical representation of what we just talked about. The total foundation budget of 12.9 billion. And then the state contribution is 41, local is 59%. And they determine your local contribution by looking at your 50% of your property taxes and 50% of your income effort. So those two, both income and property efforts, are what they determine your local contribution should be based upon your wealth. Let's move on to the next slide. And here, just a summary, the minimum, what you should know is the minimum state aid, even if you're very, very wealthy, you're always going to get the minimum, which is 17.5% of your foundation budget. But Chapter 78 is the aid, equalization aid, because it tries to equal out poorer school districts from wealthier school districts to provide more compensation for the poor. The state determines Chapter 70 foundation budget for each school district. So each school district has their own separate foundation budget based upon the makeup of their student body.
So I just want to have you correct me if I'm not right, but my memory is that there have been years where districts were not even getting the 17.5% because they couldn't fund it. Is that correct? I remember being on Beacon Hill advocating for, making sure 17.5 was actually a fulfilled promise from the state level.
That could be, I'm not aware of that.
Getting 17%.
Seriously, I thought there were years where we were.
I'm not sure, I can't remember that piece of it. What I certainly know is that for many years, up until this past year, there was ongoing efforts about that the foundation budget wasn't being calculated appropriately, meaning that cost had increased, or they weren't really accounting for the true cost of educating, certain types of children, related to,
Special education.
special education,
healthcare
poverty,
costs.
that sort of thing. So there's been different arguments all along the way. And what Gary's getting to here is that the Chapter 70 formula was changed, I think 2 years ago now. This is the first year it's actually being funded, that change. And so because of that, there's some some changes happening. But I don't remember this, but it's always been a case and a long-standing battle on the legislature at Beacon Hill about whether or not it'd be being funded appropriately.
So they revised, exactly as Ben said, they revised the formula and provided more dollars for health insurance and English language learners, low income, and special education students. Those three are additional costs above and beyond the grade level the student is placed at. So now our foundation budget, you'll see, is calculated, and it amounts to $43.6 million. Last year, it was 39 million. So it went up 4.3 million, or 10%. So 10% bump. We'll get to a second what is a big component of that jump.
So just to be clear about that, this is where a foundation budget term becomes complicated or confusing to me anyway. is that's the amount that the state is saying, that's the minimum amount, the state is saying we should pay for, we should fund our education at. Doesn't mean they're giving us that money, in fact, they're not, okay? But we do get Gloucester gets 22.13% of what they have calculated as our foundation budget from the state.
So our state aid is 22% of that 43.6 million. Next slide.
How much was it? 20, did you say 22%?
Yes.
22.13, yep.
And what some 6 factors that work together to determine the Chapter 70 aid enrollment. So more students you have, the more, you know, each student is about, for us, $14,000 our foundation. Wage adjustment, so there's a calculation to adjust salaries and other costs from Western Mass to Eastern Mass. And our adjustment factor, which is applied to all the rates, is 104.6%.
What did you say our per pupil spending was, 14?
14,000. That is
Foundation, yeah.
Foundation.
foundation, not
Not what we
what we
Oh,
spend.
yeah, I know we spend higher than that, I was just for the foundation.
Yeah, and we'll see that in a minute. So, so inflation is a big factor as well. And it has in fact gone up significantly due to inflation. The local contribution, as I said before, property value and income taxes. So let's move on to the next slide. Here, and this reinforces what Ben was saying earlier and why we're saying local taxation is primary. Because first is the foundation budget, which is calculated for every school district. And then they look at the comparative wealth and determine what portion of that 43 of that foundation budget we're going to pay. So they determine 78%. Now that is interesting because what was last year? Last year was 82.5 that we paid. So we're paying less this year. So that's a significant. Equalization aid then is the result after subtracting the local contribution from the foundation from 100%. The balance is the equalization aid or state aid. So let's move on to the next slide. So the foundation budget it's complicated how it's arrived at. They use 13 different enrollment categories. So the first 7 have to do with where the student is, you know, what grade level.
And that's across the top.
Across the top. And then you see that heading that says incremental cost. That is the, you know, what type of student, if that is a special needs student. So we have special education, we have English language learners, and we have low income. So, and you can't see it here, but I've got another chart that shows it, but the foundation budget per pupil is 14,306. And that is taken the 43 million dividing by our foundation enrollment. You get a cost per student, $14,306. There are 11 functional areas, and they run from administration, teaching, pupil services, and let's see what else here. Guidance, instructional materials. So there's 11 different functional areas of different rates for each one of those areas. So it's a matrix, 13 by 11, and they come up with the bare minimum that you need to spend Now, why do they say that? Because the money goes to the city. Our state aid goes to the city. And so they put it in because maybe a long time ago, some schools, districts were not funding it properly. So they
You
said,
mean communities, not districts, right? Communities were not giving enough money to their
Thank you.
schools.
yeah, you got it. So they came up with this required net school spending.
Community, the municipality or city government has got to hand over at least that much.
Yes.
Right.
All right. In fact, you'll see Gloucester is way above that.
Are they required by law to do that, or is that a recommendation? to let
Required by
them-
law, just required net school spending. And then we'll look at, where we are in terms of what our spending is compared to the law.
And is out of kids at choice out or go to the vocational schools included in that spending amount? Is it
Yeah,
by
in the
total
foundation enrollment, yes.
in this
Yeah, the rates have
category?
changed.
What?
So you see the column 7 there, vocational, the rates, underlying rates that calculate. In each row, 125 times a certain rate for that administration brings us to our number for those vocational students. And it's
So
a
the
different
total
rate.
spending, which was whatever it was, I forget the exact number, 43, 43, that includes money spent on out-of-district students to other school districts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not just in the Gloucester, it's not just here, it includes the million something we paid at Essex North Shore
Yes.
and any
Yeah,
other student.
That's why I see in the top right by the total, it's over 3,000, which isn't our industry
Okay.
pupil amount.
So yeah, our foundation enrollment in the top corner, right-hand corner is 3,051. We don't have 3,051 students.
Yeah, we do, they just don't all come here.
Right.
Right,
They're in Gloucester, but not here. Okay.
that's well said. They're in Gloucester, but not all coming to our school.
Got it.
All right, so next slide,
And
please.
Gary, just to be,
Sure.
that's public school students, right? So these calculations do not
Public
include
school.
anybody enrolled in private school.
Thank you for that clarification.
So we know we have a lot more
Yeah,
children.
that's, thank you for that precision. It is public students. All right, so net school spending, let's look at this really, not too many numbers, but they're important. The 43.6, that's what we've been talking about for FY '23. You can see the jump from FY '22. Now, what is our budget? Our budget that we've laid out in previous meetings is 46.9, call it 47 million. Now that exceeds the required net school spending, but not only that, remember, the DPW does a lot of work for the school district. They hire the custodians, they pay salaries for those custodians. Those costs add up to $18 million, not just custodians, but there are other costs in there, you said.
Snow removal, insurance, things.
Yeah, employer pension costs and the employer costs for health insurance. So 18,
About 11 million of that is what's counted again towards net school spend. 11 of that 18, according to, DESI's formula and calculations of what they take from our report.
11, okay.
Yes,
So then let's add the 11 to the 46, and we're at 57 million, so way above the net school spending requirement. And that's nice. It's good
And common, right?
and common.
Common for districts.
Yep.
to be-
I took a look at some of our comparable DART districts, Salem, other ones, and it was similar.
And said differently, if we only spent this on our students would be in big trouble.
Yeah.
They would, right? Because there's just so much.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. This is the different categories, and you can see comparison from FY '23 to FY '22. And notice that increases for each category. A lot of it is inflation, but if you see the incremental, that went up 2.4 million. And that 2.4 million, we'll see on the next slide, most of it is low income. So our low income numbers have gone up significantly. So if you can show,
Wouldn't that be due to the inflation?
inflation is a component, but if you look at the other categories, special ed, English language learners, they didn't go up, as significant as the low income.
So the numbers increase, and also if you think about the increment for each low income student, that also increased in the formula. So that you have that, they're paying, essentially paying us, or I think they're calculating that low income students are more expensive to, they've raised the additional increment it costs to educate low income students. And we have more low income students. So that is how you get sort of, it's a double bump in a sense. If they simply increase the increment amount, and we get the same number, in other words, that budget would still go up. The fact that we have more students and they've increased the increment means it's an even larger number.
Yeah, and that, go ahead.
I was gonna say, do we have more students or did the students just get,
Your
I wanted to
question.
say diagnosed, but
Right.
that's not the right
No,
word.
no.
Calculated differently. In other
Yeah.
words, we didn't get 50 more low-income students, maybe 50 students moved into that category, but they were counted in a category prior.
Yeah, so we have more students this year than last year.
We
It is
do,
unlikely that all those students, meaning, I'm sure there was some transition as well.
yeah,
New students and transition. I don't think we have the.
and that's okay, I was
Yeah.
Well,
trying to think it out in my head.
I do have that
There you
information.
go.
Right in the right-hand corner, you see the box. It says low-income enrollment. The enrollment went from 1257 to 1414.
Okay.
So, and
What I was asking was, are all those new students, or are those some students that were not low income and now they are? Like the existing students who transitioned to a lower wealth category.
it could be, I don't have that
It's
information.
like we learned last
There's
year,
potentially,
1 in 6 families in Gloucester was using the food bank, right? And they
Right.
weren't before
yeah,
some of the economic pressures came. So
right.
it wasn't people that moved in, it was just their income changed
Or they were suddenly identified.
or identified, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have an increase from, what was this, fiscal 21 to 22 is an increase of 60 students.
Even we don't know 23 yet.
Right. All I'm saying is.
Yeah, we had some
We didn't go up 7 students.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. The other thing that Ben just talked about was, in fact, they're giving us more dollars for each student. So last year was 4,951. This year is 55,810. So,
Yeah, nearly a 20%.
That's,
yeah, so it's a combination.
But just to be clear, again, this is what the state is calculating we should pay. This is not the money they're giving us, right? So those are two different things. Am I
that's what
right?
our foundation budget.
Yeah,
is.
you are absolutely correct. We're still on the cost tabulation. But I will say, again, this is the foundation, the floor, the minimum, the requirement. Okay, so let's move on to the next one.
And yeah, everybody's at a 17% minimum, right? You're getting that regardless of what
Yes,
school you are. We're at
as a
22.
minimum,
We're at 22, is that what I heard?
yeah, that's right. 22. And last year we were at 17 and a half. Here's I think Melissa was talking about, this is all the students. Yeah, you'll see that our total foundation enrollment, which is all the kids public kids that live in Gloucester, that go to a public school, it went up from 3,017 to 3,051. And 28 of the increase is kindergarten. So those students will percolate throughout or matriculate throughout our school district.
Helpful next time we show which of these are actual in our schools, the difference in what's actually in our schools.
Yeah, well, I've got another enrollment.
Okay.
So can you go back there though?
Sure.
The foundation budget enrollment includes, as I said, all public school students who live in Gloucester, even though they may attend a public school outside of Gloucester. So, yeah, the key word to,
Yeah, thank you.
so enrollment here, this is now the actual people as of October 1st, 2021, I'm sorry, that reside in our district. And you can see the total is 2,753, which is less than the 3,000. But the enrollment's pretty steady from 2019 was 2,758 to 2,753. So that's encouraging that we're holding our own. There's some variances between the schools, but it looks pretty good from most of the, you'll see declines throughout the state, but here we're holding our own, which is good. Here now I'm going to turn it over to Cody, and Cody's going to talk about the end of year report as well as the staffing that is picked up by grants and revolving funds. So.
Sure, yeah, the end of year report is the most comprehensive financial report that we do in our office. It's due every year by October 1st. And we report all expenditures and revenues to the state so they can generate things like net school spending, to determine what our foundation budget will be, amongst other reports, comparison reports with other districts, tons of useful information with all of their in-depth calculations with how we spend our money. These are just some categories ranging from FY20's report to this most recent FY21's report and their difference across our types of expenditures. And you'll notice pretty steady increases across the board, with the exception of the regional school assessment. Yeah, it's a very thorough, important report that we work in tandem with the auditor's office to complete, to ensure that we're doing everything correctly and abiding by all laws when it comes to expenditures.
And we get some of we must get some of these numbers from the city to be on.
Yes,
this
we
report.
did. We get a lot of numbers from the city. And that contributes to our net school spending as well, like we outlined in prior slides.
So then the one that jumps out at me is maintenance. So for fiscal
Yeah, that's all from the
Right.
city.
21, that would have included all the work on HVAC for air quality, which we knew was, 700,000
Yeah.
and other things like that.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
You think the gym floor would be enough?
Would the gym
No.
floor be in that, or is that a capital? Is there such a?
That was several years ago though, the gym floor. Because you're talking about the field house?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was several years
Oh,
ago,
okay.
prior to FY.
Wasn't that far away, was
I think it was the summer before, I think it was the summer of
We
19.
finished it last fall of 2020.
it?
I was here.
When you got here?
And-
Oh, you,
and-
fall 2020.
It seems like 5 years ago. It was a year and a half.
Yeah, so part of the expenditure would have been captured in FY20, and then the tail end to the summer would have been FY21.
And
All
then-
based on that.
and you were talking about those
Fiscal.
machines, the HVAC work we did for COVID.
Yeah, that would be.
I think it should be captured then. To your point. Could be, it was $1 million, so could be in the maintenance.
Yeah, we don't get the necessary detail breakdown of how the city's expenditures, but.
And regional school assessment is a 610, yes.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
like the cost of 2 students.
Then on to,
Generally. Yeah. Less, because there's less enrollment, there's less kids, I think, this year.
now we're on to staff funded by grants and revolving funds. This is represented in the budget book, and I forget which tab exactly. But this representation, the increase is mainly due to all the ESSER grant influx we've received. You'll see the big difference there in grants of nearly 600,000. Revolving funds steadily going up, but the main increase was due to ESSER, the big jump. Otherwise, it's COLA and adding certain people to where we can to different grants and revolving funds. But most of it is captured. I think about 600 of, or 400 of it is about ESSER.
Did you give a number for that tab off the top of your head? or-
I
Well,
didn't have it on,
There's, yeah.
12.
Yeah, I was looking it up as you were.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions regarding it?
No, Cody, do you have it?
So I'm next, right?
You are.
Okay. Could I present?
Absolutely.
Can we get a copy of this afterwards? I
It's,
just want to go back and look at it. I didn't see it in our,
It's in your folder.
oh, it
in your
is, I didn't
folder.
see it
Yeah, it's the one slide presentation.
there. Okay,
It's called CFO.
CFO.
So I'm gonna connect the dots on our earlier presentations and tonight in the budget book. Show. All right. I'm gonna do that by not going through all the slides we already showed you and all this detail about health insurance and staff and salary adjustments and ESSER and average tuition costs and budget by department. We'll get at that. Or growth over time or per pupil. I will remind you that I referenced both in speaking with you, Melissa, and Kathy, and also to the committee, and this is our February meeting, and we're still working on a few things in terms of what we want to fund in next year, okay? And how that's a combination, of course, as Cody is saying, grants, including ESSER funding and operating budget. And so tonight, what I want to do is as you're thinking about, as you're looking through the budget book, I want to do a little bit better job than we have so far of connecting our guiding principles for the budget development. Or this is the first thing we led off all our priority conversations with. Okay, that's connected to our plan for ongoing improvement that's being developed. It's based on our priority for student learning, student support, and high quality instruction. That moderation and financial prudence are a must because COVID is still here, folks. And then improving recruitment and retention of staff. We talked a lot about that through our negotiation process. And then the last piece is building a budget with an eye towards FY25 when the federal relief funding ends. I'm going to first focus on the first two and then connect numbers 3 and numbers 5 here. Okay, so we move on here. So the first two connected to Gloucester Public Schools plan for ongoing improvement and based on our priorities for high quality instruction, student learning, and student support. So what we're working on now is how we're going to support the O'Malley Sustainable Improvement Plan. Lynn has been working through schedule changes and staffing, maybe some staffing changes, additions that would allow for that may allow for smaller class sizes. Okay, we would do those changes because it allows us to change the schedule, allow for a little different approach that we think will allow us to use support students better, to be more focused in smaller groups. We're working on operation support at GHS. We've heard from public and members of the staff. I've heard from all of you, a number of school members, is how can we make sure that the high school has the leadership support so we can do good evaluations, good instructional support, that sort of thing. The real instructional leader there are many instructional leaders at high school, okay, but the one who is the organizer of that work is James Cook. That does not happen in all high schools. Sometimes some high schools, depending on the personnel they have, that might be an assistant principal, or that might be a curriculum coordinator who's organizing the work of the department heads, that sort of stuff, or the instructional leader team. Principal Cook is our man here, and I'm very thankful for that. And so we're looking to see how we can take off some of his many hats he wears, and any principal wears a lot of hats. Can we build up some operation support so that he has more time to focus on instructional support? That may be supporting individual teachers, that may be supporting the instructional leadership team, that may be supporting program leaders. All that work is what moves the bulk of teachers forward. So looking at how we can do that. And putting something into play, which we'll get to at a later date. And the K-5 curriculum support, you've heard again and again, you've heard bits and pieces about the important work we're doing on piloting and revising a new ELA curriculum, K-5. That's going to be a significant change in instructional practice for our elementary school teachers in a very good way that, while complicated and challenging, the folks who are piloting those two options are excited about. And so we are really clear that to do that well, that change really well, we're going to have some additional curriculum support needed across all elementaries for at least 1 year while we begin that. No more than 2, maybe just 1. And then as we've come to again and again, not again, in our presentation last meeting, just about the continuing investments in instructional technology. All these are things that we're going to work into the budget in some way, but it may be it will be a combination of operating budget, which we're focusing on, and the budget focus about operating budget, and then also the grants that Cody was talking about. The other piece is supporting our most vulnerable learners. This is another piece that's a key part of our plan for ongoing improvement. These will seem familiar to you. We talk again and again about an EL teacher, GHS, possible contingencies for EL support. As you may remember, we've had significant increases, especially at the high school during the school year for our EL learners, and this year in particular, many more newcomers than the past. Okay, we expect that to continue. So what we're going to come forward with is we're looking into whether we can afford a contingency for EL support like we do for special education. Okay, this is another area where vulnerable learners, that things change in that population, change in terms of the staffing needed during the school year, or it can change. So we're looking into that. This is next one, district-wide psychologist. It is very, very clear that there are many more evaluations related to students in possible special education or other needs because of the pandemic. We literally have many more than the past. We are looking into and coming close to figuring out a way to do this psychologist for the rest of this year and next year. So 1-year position essentially. To support our evaluations and make sure we do those thoroughly, accurately, and also timely, on fashion, which we're struggling with, very honestly. As are many other districts, we have resources to be able to add this in a one time for short term. Increase nursing capacity this year at GHS, and we're intending to continue that for next year. It's 0.6 was the addition. And then we've been mentioning to you about shifts to preschool that move us toward more inclusive practices and full-day programs. The preschool continues, the staff and Anne Marie and Katie Provo continue to work on that. We don't think it necessarily will take additional staff, but I wanted to have it here so you know we're working on it. And then the last piece is continuing, you've heard this before, continuing district-wide leadership for SEL mental health support, Amy Camp's position, and also Lisa Williams for special education leadership at the high school, particularly out of district leadership, out of district support. Those two things we've talked to you about, and we're still intending to move them to the operating budget from ESSER. Okay, those aren't new. Those are the types of things we're doing that are connected to our priority for student learning and connected to what we, the plan for ongoing improvement, which is under development. The piece that we talked about, the next two guiding principles on the top there, moderation, financial prudence are a must, and then building a budget with an eye towards FY25. While we want to move forward with these things, and we will in some way, shape, or form, okay, we aren't quite set on where they'll be funded from. Okay, whether it's operating budget or whether it's additional grants we have, like reallocating existing special education grants, for example, like that can happen for the psychologist, or moving ESSER funded positions to the operating budget, as we talked about. already, that the 4 positions we're moving opens up more money in ESSER. Okay, so can we fund some of these things through that opening up of ESSER? Okay, IT is a likely case for that, maybe some capital expenditures. Then the last piece is that is really sort of what I've already said, is that considering a small number of short-term positions that could go into ESSER.
So we can spend ESSER money on IT?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't think we could.
yeah, we can spend ESSER money on, it's very broad.
Okay.
Yeah, you can spend on capital, well, which was, for me, that was the biggest surprise, honestly. Instructional technology, I get. The fact that you can spend on capital expenditures is,
Yeah, that's surprising.
yeah, it was surprising from the beginning, but it's
Okay.
crystal clear, so.
Yeah, ESER one had a lot more,
Restrictions.
yeah.
Yeah.
ESSER 2, I think, and fewer ESSER 3 have essentially almost done.
When's ESSER 4 coming?
I don't think that is before coming.
That's when I'll get off the committee then.
So what you can expect going forward on these, on this work here is just further clarification on what the actual position might be and what funding source it would come from, and then also how long term it would be. Okay. Does that make sense?
Can you just explain, what was the extra nursing at GHS for?
Yeah, so what we've had is
Because we have 2 there, right?
we've always had 2.0 here, but it was always a full-time person, 1.0 full-time person, a 0.4 person here 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And the nurse leader
Oh, yeah.
filled in the rest.
Yeah.
That started failing badly last year, just because of the overall
Yeah.
nature of it. And so this year we're able to, this is with ESSER dollars, put in 0.6. We have 2 full-time nurses here, and that allows that allows the nurse leader to do all he's been doing this year. Okay. It also allows more flexibility in terms of, as we've said, having difficulty getting substitutes. When someone's out, he fills in. But with the growth of the need for support, with special education and health and mental health across the district,
Right, yeah.
that increase of 0.6 allows us to better serve high school students, but have greater flexibility around the district as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions, Bill?
I don't, no, that's,
Very good.
Try our best.
The next, do you want to go on to the next item?
Sure. We
Okay,
don't have any questions. Not right now, anyway.
let's go on to the public hearing notice.
Thought you might know something coming up.
sorry.
I didn't know. I was
Yeah.
wondering.
Something to recommend.
And the public hearing notice is the 13th of April?
Yes,
Is that part of the presentation, Jerry, or is it just the?
no, it's just in the pack.
Great.
Yeah, if you can blow that up for us.
We don't have to get that out 4 weeks before?
No, it's
I thought it was.
7 days or 7 or 10 days before. You must have it advertised in the newspaper.
I thought it was different for the public hearing, that's all.
Yeah, no. So here, we plan on,
You should-
this is the same numbers as we presented before.
Mhm.
It's just laid out in the same format that we've always published. And we again show FY '22, what was approved, and then FY '23. And you can see the difference is an increase of 1.35 million. And that's the same number we've talked previously about. It adds up to a 2.96%. I like to publish this. Can you cursor down?
Yep.
On March 31st, which is like 13 days ahead of the public hearing, which the requirement is either 7 or 10 days. So it gives us enough time to meet the law and let everyone know that we're holding a public hearing to hear from the community And this is the same dollars that we have seen before. And I'll stop here and ask if there's any questions.
So the public hearing is open to the public, obviously. They come in and ask questions of you per se, or is it to the general?
What happens is superintendent will make a presentation on the budget, similar to what he has done previously before the school committee. And then after that presentation, we open it up to the community to ask any questions regarding about the budget, the process, anything in relation to. So that happens on April 13th.
Sometimes people make comments of where they'd like us to spend money,
Yeah.
you know, suggestions, recommendations, demands, things like that. It's the public's opportunity to react to how we're spending the money.
Yeah, and it's
And it's usually not well attended.
right. Usually, last year we did have several people speak, but in previous years, it's been relatively few. And this, we would need a motion, we would like a motion to approve the publication of this so that I have the authority to publish this in the newspaper. So this is the first step, and then we'll ask the school committee to do the same. So we're looking for a recommendation from this BNF committee. But before we do that, I'd like to entertain any questions that you may have.
So procedure wise, you're gonna reach out to the newspaper when? I only ask because I do public hearings all the time for my other committee that I'm on, so you're reaching out on March 31st?
No, I've reached out already
Okay.
and I'm all set,
Good plan, okay,
and I'm just,
just need to go ahead.
yeah, to go ahead from both bodies. And if there's any changes, I'll make the changes, but I know that we have to publish something.
I think historically we haven't necessarily shown the percent in the posting, right? We
No.
took it out.
I can take it up, but last year we did. Yeah.
I think it was because to our advantage last year, we wanted to show something.
No, this is not, this is pretty neutral to.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
It's totally up to,
I don't think we need it.
Yeah, I just,
take it out.
yeah, I don't think
Sure.
it goes one way or the other, but I'm not sure it's necessary.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll take out the 2.96%.
But you're gonna leave the 1.35.
Yeah. Yeah, that's up to the committee. You want me to take 1.350 off too?
Either one of them bothers me that much, but.
One thing we did some last year, and I don't know if this is appropriate in this document, is we showed what the increase was once you got rid of insurance,
your health insurance.
health insurance, and then they put that percentage, or for both percentages, a 2.96 in this case, and then showed what the healthcare cost was. The health increase, rather, health increase.
Yeah, we did do that.
And so you could say the actual, dollar spending increase is this. I don't mean to make it more complicated, I'm just trying to, one thing, I think it was Joel Vaza came up with that last year. Again, I'm not sure if it was a public hearing budget, but
I think we
What do
were
you-
supposed to-
what he was trying to get at was just an accurate representation of how our spending increases.
So, yeah, I think we should probably just, it doesn't, I mean, people can do math if they want to know what the increase is. So I would get rid of the amount and the percent.
Just what last year's compared to this year's.
And I think in terms of this document.
Yeah.
I think that particular information is helpful when we present to city council.
Okay.
Just so they can see
Yes,
what
great.
percent is
Yep,
with before health insurance. I'm not sure.
What we can
You know,
do,
during your presentation on the, if people are interested enough in what's in the 1.3, it'll be clear that there's a, disproportionate percent increase relative to health insurance than it is to the overall budget.
and we can also include that in And then presentation to school committee too. Yeah, and then obviously that will go towards the city
I don't
council.
think that number is that important to share, actually. If there's
It's a little
too much
lower.
detrimental to it.
Yeah, it was like 5%
Yeah,
or less. It wasn't a significant increase. I was surprised, quite honestly. I thought it was going to be 6.
So is that been set now, even though inflation is going a little haywire?
Yeah, it's a premium, so it's set for next year.
okay, can you see?
Yeah.
GIC,
Yeah,
right?
JC, yeah. We've been meeting. That hasn't been a concern.
Yeah, it was
More the retirement.
favorable.
The retirement is gonna be the problem, retirees insurance.
Mm.
That's where you're gonna see some discussion.
So just to summarize, you want the percentage off. Did you want the amount off too? Okay. So just the 2 columns.
Just the 2 columns, keep it simple.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'll make a motion that we recommend to the full school committee to approve the public hearing posting as discussed.
Yes, second.
Present.
And this will, under discussion, this will go to the school committee so they know what it is.
Yeah,
For
definitely.
next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. So I'll need
They're
that
gonna
vote.
leave it up. I'm not getting into the particulars of my life.
Yeah, I'll need that vote in order to
Yep.
publish.
Roll call vote, Maria, no, any other questions, concerns? No.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes,
Ms. Prince,
Yes,
and Kathy Clancy.
Yes,
great. And budget transfers.
Okay, Cody, can you blow that up? Thank you very much. So we wanted to pay for Chromebooks for next year. In this year's budget, we had some opportunity to do so. And for grades 3 and 9, came out to $89,000. And I took it from employee health insurance and a salary account that we had some excess funds.
Why do we have so much on the health insurance? Just because we went a little bit higher than what it actually came in?
Yeah. Exactly. So,
Want to be consistent in emotions?
yeah, I still have one more.
Oh, you do, I'm
too.
sorry.
So cursor down for me, please. We're skipping some of the small, and principals have discretion to move money within their accounts. I'm not going to go over 2,000, but I'm going to talk about the 30,000. And that was to pay for the recess monitors that we contract with from the YMCA. The principals like using them because they are in our after-school program, and so they see the similar people that they see after school, and it's worked out well. They're quality recess monitors, and for the year, it's going to cost us $30,000. And I took it from a special ed account that we had some additional funding available. So those 2 were the major transfers. The other ones were all, in the thousands.
So these are like new supervisors? that
Yes.
We don't have,
Yes, that we had trouble
hiring.
hiring.
and are they at every school that is providing that? Or there's certain schools that,
Certain schools, but not every school.
Do we know what the hourly wage is, salary,
Yeah, $20.
$20?
and how many are there here?
There are 2 at East Gloucester, 1 at West Parish, and there's 1 more that is escaping me.
Is it at veterans over in the field? Or the mailing today?
What were the 2 you named?
East Gloucester,
West Parish?
East Gloucester.
2 at East Gloucester, 1 at West Parish,
Spunk Cove?
or is it veterans?
Might be Plum Cove. I will email that to you.
That's
No, I'll do that. That's gonna,
Fun, yeah. 2 o'clock in the morning, it's gonna
That's
come
kind
right
of
here.
not,
I can think about that.
Text me, I'll be out.
that's gonna bother me. So at any rate, those were the budget transfers. I need a motion from this committee to recommend to the full committee.
To approve the budget transfers, I
Yes.
so moved.
Second,
Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Mr. Melvin,
yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Captain Lancy.
Yes.
Okay. And that's it.
Yeah,
Any other matters?
6:27, that was pretty. efficient.
We started late.
Yeah, I
Is there
commend,
anything you want to bring up?
I commend everybody on how this budget process and communicating what goals are and everything has been a really terrific. We're talking about things we know we've seen before, nothing surprising, moving it along as things go through the process. So-
Yeah, a lot is to Ben's credit. He's really connected the education to the
Absolutely.
budget, which is the key. Because we want to be spending money on what's important. And he knows,
It's hard to argue with what we're putting forward when you hear the reasons first.
yeah,
Yeah, and then,
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you can't say no to that.
yeah, that's him.
And I appreciate the patience of being the new guy. It's kind of been a real learning curve for me to kind of learn about the budget.
Yeah.
Understand what it's all about, be patience, both you and Cody.
Yeah.
Explain some probably rudimentary questions to you.
No,
Absolutely not.
you were
I think
sharp
when you figure out
asking
the
good
foundation
questions.
of it, I haven't figured it out yet.
And the refreshers are refreshers for
Algebra
me
on
too.
steroids.
no, exactly, every year, I need to get my head around chapter 7, all the different manifestations of the terrible language and terms they use, which don't make any sense, and it's not obvious in any way, shape, or form, so it's very helpful, actually.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Roll call?
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
and Captain Lancy.
Yes.
Good night.